This week on the Men at the Movies podcast, we talk about the recent release, The Suicide Squad. Even though breaking patterns feels like death, if you want to live a different story, you're going to have to make different decisions. But when you make that courageous choice, you inspire others to do the same. And we see that those things that we hold too tightly can become our idols. Join us as we discover God's truth in this movie.
The movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story, the story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being. Hello and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and joining me on the Zoom, on the live stream, on the YouTube, all over the place is Britt Mooney. Hey, man.
What's up? Zoom. Did you ever watch that show back in the 70s? There was a show on PBS in the afternoon called Zoom.
No, in the 70s, I was a young buck.
Yeah, you were a young buck?
maybe more of a fawn at that point.
Bambi-esque.
Yes, I was very Bambi. He could call me Flower if he wants to. No, we're not doing Bambi today. We're going off the rails. I said, Britt, I've had enough of these 80s movies. Let's do a movie that's somewhat current. And The Suicide Squad had just released. And so I was like, let's try The Suicide Squad and see what happens.
Now it's The Suicide. I can't even say it. The Suicide Squad, right? It's not suicide because, obviously so different.
The makes all the difference. So we're giving you the heads up. We're going to be talking about spoilers. So If you don't want to spoil the movie, stop listening.
Yep.
We are also going to be playing some clips. And if you haven't seen the movie, it's got some language in it. I told Britt that this movie is pushing the envelope for content on the podcast. Lots of cursing, lots of violence, lots of gore. And all that being said, I enjoyed it a lot more than Britt did. I said, it's sort of like if you mix Deadpool with the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah. And I said, except not as original.
Right. Because it's like, well, Deadpool and Guardians were done already. So
yeah, I mean, we've done this, and it's, as we'll talk about it, it definitely had some elements that I appreciated. And I think will give us some good content to talk about. I just felt it was a little lazy of an attempt at money making. Like, everybody likes Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Everybody liked Deadpool, right?
Groot.
Let's just do this, so they had the Groot character, which is basically the shark guy. Although he didn't say I am shark, but he kind of had those sort of elements. And I just felt like it could have been more original. But there were definitely things I liked. I mean, like, finally, a cool bad guy. Like, I definitely like the bad guy in this one, the Starro character.
And by bad guy, you mean the U.S. government, right?
No, I actually mean, the alien. They brought in Starro from the comic books, which is, I'm kind of a comic book nerd from the old school. And that was one of the comic book bad guys. And it was always used as a device to turn a good guy into a bad guy, right? Like, spoiler alert, if you've seen the movie, like, the big Starro dude, alien, like, has the little Starro, like, they're like starfish looking things.
Really gross. The way they just kind of squirt out of his armpits.
I know, right? And then they latch onto people, and then the main alien can then mind control them and make them do what he wants. And so in the comic books, it was always used as a device to, like, make Superman bad. What are we going to do? And all that sort of stuff. So
we'll have Starro take over him.
Yeah. So,
but you liked the Starro character.
I just like the
from history, not necessarily. I mean, he didn't have a lot of arc in this movie.
No, although they tried, like right at the end, I don't know if you caught that. It was like, I was happy in space.
That's right.
I was like,
I just liked looking at the stars, and you jerk bastard astronauts captured me and made me squirt out little starfish out my armpits and take over the world.
But no, yeah, just as a nostalgic sort of thing. Yeah, I did like they brought in Starro. But again, as we'll talk about, there were definitely some themes and the moral choices they had to deal with. I thought they did a good job. Yeah.
And part of this, we've been talking for about half an hour already, trying to figure out exactly where we want to go with this. And some of that, as Britt just mentioned, you talked about the moral choices. So you've got this collection of basically villains, not super villains, just villain. Like seriously, there's a dude called Polka Dot Man who, and they introduce him in the guy, John Cena, who I think is a great, in his character as Peacemaker. And he says, what does he do? Throw polka dots at people? Yep. Yes, he does.
Yep. That's what he does.
I did a little research or reading it even before I watched it. And they said, basically they looked for who would be the lamest villain or stupidest or most obscure. And let's bring him on board and then give him all these, as it turns out, some mommy issues. And, you know, there's a scene early when Idris Elba's character, Bloodsport, said, we're all going to die. And Polka Dot Man says, I hope so.
You're right. You're right.
Just really pathetic.
Because his life was suffering, right? His life was suffering. You know, he had this virus, quote unquote, that gave him superpowers, but, you know, kind of didn't. And so just to go into the setup, which was interesting, which, you know, you had Amanda Waller, which, you know, she's also from the comic books, and she's like the CIA black ops sort of manipulative part of the government that Batman and all these guys have to kind of deal with, and amoral and just out for these sort of things. And so she kind of brings in the Suicide Squad, which basically means she goes to these criminals whose lives are expendable, right? So because they're in jail, because they're just going to spend their lives in jail anyway, she gives them the opportunity to do a suicide type mission. And if you happen to survive, maybe you get free, or you get 10 years off your sentence, or whatever. All that to say is it's kind of an interesting setup, because it's kind of how the world treats people, right? Like treats people very like you are expendable in who you are. Like you already feel like crap, probably. You already feel stuck. And then the opportunities you do get are not ones you want. It's just better than what you had, right? And so,
right, like one guy said, anything's better than this place. Right. Welcome to anything.
You know, it makes the moral choices that they make towards the end. It makes that for an interesting storyline, because I think we all want to feel free, even though we feel stuck. We all want to feel free to make good moral choices, even though we feel stuck. So for part of the setup is, you know, this is in the first movie and it's in the comic books and stuff. For the Suicide Squad, like she puts these bombs in the backs of people's heads that she has control over. So if you happen to go off script, like this is a way of making sure you do what you say you're going to do, because she at any time can push a button and your head blows off, right? So even though they feel like this is going to cost me my life, they make moral choices at the end. And so I think it's a good setup, because I think a lot of people, even though it's a stupid, I don't know, maybe not stupid, but it's a kind of a dumb little movie and violent and all this sort of stuff. But I think that that's a good setup for what we want to talk about, because I think a lot of people feel that way. I think a lot of people feel, even maybe many Christians feel stuck. They feel like I don't have any good choices that are worth anything. And so anyway, I like that setup.
You hit on something really powerful there, because even in the movie, as they're going off, this team is going off to do whatever mission they're supposed to do. Harley Quinn shows up, played by Margot Robbie, who we both love as an actor. She shows up and they're like, oh, what are you doing back here? Because she had done the Suicide Squad thing before and they thought, oh, she was out and free. But here she is, as in, yeah, I can't remember what she did, some like armed robbery or something. Yeah. This idea that you are this, and like you said, you're never going to change. And right. you brought up that idea of this is all I ever am. I don't really have a choice. It's just what happens. I get frustrated or angry or bored, and your wife's out of town, so you're going to look at porn because that's what you do. And you've tried to quit and you can't. Or it's, the boss is yelling at you because something happened and you got a meeting, and so you go home and yell at your wife. And there are all sorts of patterns that we've exhibited over the years that have become our way of dealing with things. And we feel trapped and we feel chained by those, and we feel like we don't have a choice. It's like, no, I have to do this. I have to work 80 hours a week. I have to eat that 4th piece of pizza or drink that 6th beer, because that's why they come in a 6-pack, right? But we have these patterns is really, I know I've said it like a billion times now, but that's what it shows in this movie of these are people with patterns. They can't be fixed. They can only sort of be controlled. But as you mentioned, we do have the power of choice as we move along, and in the movie, that's what you see.
And I think it's going to be really powerful when we get there to kind of show why that's an important element to this movie and to storytelling in general. But I just want to make one more comment about kind of the movie. So we've already said it's violent. There's lots of F words. Like it seems like they told James Gunn, like, we want you to make basically Guardians of the Galaxy. You put cool music in there, and you do your little Guardians of the Galaxy thing, and they're snipping at each other, and you got the banter. But you just get to make it as bloody and violent and kill anybody you want to kill. And you just I think they gave him kind of carte blanche on everything, because these are minor characters in the DC universe. Like, if they don't get to make another movie with the shark dude, that's probably
he
fine.
Survived.
I know, but I'm just saying, I think probably only Harley Quinn was the only one that was off limits to kill. And so all I have to say is, we're not suggesting you watch movies you don't want to watch, right? If you don't want to watch a movie that has all of this blood and gore and cursing and all that, if that's fine. My wife's never going to watch this movie. But see, here's the thing. We deal with people, we encounter people who are a little rough around the edges all the time. And I do want to say, as Christians, it doesn't matter what movie you watch or don't watch, right? But we are going to encounter people who cuss a little bit too much and who have anger issues and who feel stuck in that. We're going to encounter people symbolically that are like this movie, right? Mm-hmm. Rough, kind of gross, whatever. We're going to encounter people, and yet that doesn't mean we can't try to find their story in the midst of all the distractions that they try to throw out there at us. And I think that's a really kind of important point to me. And again, I don't care if you watch this movie or not, but I do care that people realize that we don't get to reject people in our normal everyday life just because they may happen to be rough around the edges. In fact, we should realize that's probably coming from somewhere, and they probably need to feel like they have a choice, like they need to feel freedom. Like there's probably longing within them for something that if we dug a little bit and asked some questions and got into the story a little bit, like they do in the movie, which I like that part too. They started asking each other questions about their past and stuff, and they become more intimate as the movie goes. So all that to say is, I like that. That is something that I do want to point out, that just like this movie, we should be willing to sort of engage in things that may not always look so great on the outside, and realize there might be something valuable in the midst of it that we can see.
And so the first clip that I'm going to play is actually one of those examples that Britt was just talking about. The context of this conversation, we find out Idris Elba's character, Bloodsport, is terrified of rats. And for some reason, that was not common knowledge. He's, as he says, I'm an assassin. I don't let my liabilities be known. But a part of this team is Ratcatcher 2, who, as Britt says, there's a Ratcatcher who was a dude in the comic books, and Ratcatcher 2 is his daughter. So the daughter, Ratcatcher 2, is asking Bloodsport, why are you afraid of rats? And he asks her, why do you love rats? And so what develops is not really a conversation about rats, but a conversation about fathers.
Why are you so afraid of rats?
Why are you so in love with them, Ratcatcher 2? You know what I think? I think you have a serious case of daddy issues.
I have no issues with how much I love my father. Although he was a genius, we lived homeless in the streets of Portugal because of his burdens. He built the machines I employ today and taught me the secrets of calling the rats. They brought us trinkets to live on, and they kept us warm at nights when we would have frozen. But eventually, my father's burdens became too heavy to carry. And he was gone. I took his machinery and came to America. It is a dream, right? But I was arrested for armed bank robbery. Do you believe it? The state considered the rats a weapon. What?
You remind me of my daughter. The reason I'm here.
Why are you so afraid of rats?
My old man. When I was a lad, if I didn't finish a task right, he would dole out the punishment. And one day he just locked me in a crate for 24 hours. And it was full of starving rats.
As imperfect my father was, he loved me. I wish I could give that to you.
Don't you worry, I'm gonna get you out of here alive.
I'm going to get you out of here alive.
The way they do that, because it's on a bus, and in the bus window they're actually showing pictures of Ratcatcher 2 with her dad Ratcatcher, and his burden was a heroin addiction or some sort of drug use, because you'd see the syringe going into his arm. And so she loved rats because she loved her father. And he cared for her and he loved her. You know, the rats are keeping them warm because they're homeless. They're out in the streets and it's freezing. And Bloodsport's experience with both his dad and the rats was markedly different.
Yeah.
It was a sign of punishment, a sign of, as she said, I can't remember the exact line, but I wish that I could show you or give you the love that my father
I could give that to you. Yeah. My father loved me. I wish I could give that to you. Which is one of the best exchanges in the whole movie. It's literally one of the best moments in the movie because they're getting each other's story, and it matters in the movie at that point, right? Because just as a back kind of story to where we are in this clip, her rat likes Bloodsport, so keeps trying to make friends with him.
Is that
and
rat
she's like,
waving at me?
she's like, I know you're a good person, or else what's Sebastian? Or else the rat wouldn't like you. And he's like, I hate rats. And so
and in an earlier scene with his daughter, he said, "There's nothing good in me. Stay away."
Right.
Basically. And she's like, and even in that moment, he's like, "Oh, Sebastian sees something good in you." Nope. There's nothing good in me.
Yeah, there's nothing. So there's a lot of development that happens through that, and that they actually do a good job because that sets up sort of the end of the movie And it shows again the moral choices we wish we can make, right? When he says, I'm going to make sure you live. I'm going to make sure you survive this. And she goes, no, I'm going to make sure you survive this. Because they are now becoming friends and they're being more intimate as far as on an emotional level. And he kind of sees her like his daughter.
Right.
And he says that just expressly. He literally just says it, which is important to kind of understand his arc. And so he feels protective over her. And now she's feeling protective over him. And you sort of see that development in the movie. So all that to say is I really love that exchange, because it does give us an emotional core that helps us as the movie goes. And so as you get towards the end, you feel that sense of urgency of you want these people to survive, right? Because you feel like maybe there is something good in them, it's good.
And you talk about the moral choices that they have as you see in each of these, whether it's Polka Dot Man, whose mother worked at Star Labs and wanted him to be a superhero, wanted him and his brothers and sisters to be superheroes, so infected him with this polka dot interstellar virus, whatever that is, that turns out in this glowing rash on his face. But everybody that we know, everybody that's listening, and probably Britt and I both, have had moral choices made for us in many ways. Both of them, they are, I don't want to say it as strongly as they're products of their environment, because we do have some choice of what we do with the input. And yet, as Britt said, people are rough. There's people that are rough around the edges, and sometimes they're hard to like. And sometimes there's a reason. If you had been brought up the way Bloodsport had been brought up, and hey, you stepped out of line, you messed something up, you're going in the box for 24 hours, you might come out a little bit altered. And we don't know that. C.S. Lewis said, I'm always quoting C.S. Lewis. I read other things. I just read Britt's book.
There you go.
The Kingdoms, the Living Stone 1, right?
Yeah, there you go.
It was great. Read it on Amazon. It's great. But C.S. Lewis said, we meet a man and may think him cold when he is merely hungry or lonely. I can't remember the thing. Basically, we think him like rude or aloof or kind of a jerk, but we don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of another story. I think it was Stephen Covey, but he wrote about being on a subway in New York City, and there's busy. And this guy's sitting there, and his 3 kids are just raising hell all around the subway. They're going around, they're bothering people. And he's like, why doesn't this guy do something? He should do something. He's just sitting there letting them be maniacs. At some point, somebody asks him, hey, are you going to do something about your kids? And he says, their mother just died. I don't know what to do. And it's like, oh, okay, now I'm the jerk.
Right.
For not understanding. But I think that's where you sort of opened it with the beginning of, sure, this movie may be violent. It may have a lot of curse words. It may be super weird. You may not want to see it. But there's people like this in our lives. There's people like Bloodsport. There's people like Ratcatcher 2. There's people like the Polka Dot Man.
Yeah.
Who are living out the patterns that their parents passed on. And maybe it's not the parents. Maybe it's their work. Maybe it's their loved ones. Maybe it's other people in leadership who abuse them in a variety of ways.
Yeah. And just to kind of go back to part of the setup with Waller is she does sort of lie to them at the beginning. So at the beginning, she makes it sound like they're doing something good, right? She makes it sound like what they're doing is something good, because even what's his name, Colonel, the flag guy, at some point he's on board. He's not a prisoner. I mean, he's part of the government. He's part of all of that. And he's kind of a rough character too, and I think he was in the first movie too, right? Yeah. And so all of that to say is he's involved because he thinks they're doing something good. And yet you have the peacemaker he knows a little bit more about what's really going on at that point. And so all of that to say is, so there was some promise of something better. Like, well, at least we're involved in something. We may be giving our life, but we're giving our life for something that might matter in the end. And then, of course, like I say with movies, the truth is revealed, and then they have to make a choice, right? And so we haven't really talked, by the way, about the moral choice that Harley Quinn makes at one point, which is a very strange scene. So there's a scene towards the middle of the movie where she kind of like seduces the president or whatever, or like he seduces her and she's captured, and they do the dirty deed, and he's all flowery and romantic. And then after the deed and they're talking, and he starts talking about how he's going to use this power from whatever's going on in that place, that they have to.
Jotunheim,
yeah. That he's going to use that power to, hurt people and children and everything like that.
Anybody who disparages the presidente will be sent and disappear.
Right. And so he turns around and she just shoots him. She just straight out shoots him. And she's like, look, I'm sorry, but I've just learned like I have bad choice in men. And it's this really weird sort of scene.
I loved her quote. It didn't work with the audio and stuff, but I loved that whole point of, and killing kids seems to be kind of a red flag.
And as disturbing as that scene kind of is, I mean, it's a little like, if you really think about it, I mean, Margot Robbie plays it so well, but shouldn't we kind of be that firm in what we allow into our lives? Like the justifications, like what I liked about that scene, again, I'm not suggesting we shoot people, but my point is, but I do think we should be very firm in the justifications we allow into our lives and the mentalities, because at some point those things manifest their true nature at some point. And once we realize that, we have to call things what they are, like they are, whether it's the U.S. government, whether it's your party, your political party, or your denomination, or whatever it is. We have to be lovers of the truth enough that when something like that happens, that we are willing to be violently against that. We have to be like, no, that's not okay. Killing kids is a red flag. And I think it's so easy sometimes to get caught up in things that are going on, romantic entanglements. And that's why that scene, although it seems so out of place in the movie, because it seems like there's almost two movies going on, which is another one of my problems with the movie. It's like, well, we don't really want to give, Harley Quinn her own movie, but we're just kind of gonna give her own movie in the middle of this, and then have this whole other movie going on with the rest of the Suicide Squad. But still, it seems out of place. But I just thought that was a very interesting sort of engagement and scene,
especially these days where everybody is. I mean, I've gotten off of Facebook because I got tired of the yelling and the memes, and there's a lot of stuff going on about vaccines, whether they should be mandatory or not. And there's a lot of people yelling. And I read an article, and this was a CNN article that I saw that said, have you ever, like, for instance, if I was trying to convince Britt to get the vaccine, said, Britt, here's the facts.
Right.
And the more I give him the facts, the stronger he's like, no, I don't want to. I don't trust the pharmaceutical companies. If your argument is because vaccines are what turned the people into zombies and I Am Legend, I might give you a little pushback on that one.
Right, sure.
But what the article said was, how about you ask questions? Well, why are you? It's perfectly natural to be sort of nervous about this pharmaceutical companies because they have a history of some squirrely stuff. Yeah. And so it's about, instead of like bludgeoning someone's fear over the head with facts and figures, of actually getting their story, of saying, what's going on? Why do you feel that way? That's really scary. It might say, well, it's my body, my choice. Okay. And not just push back and say, well, it's the greater good. Because again, the yelling and the escalation doesn't ever change anything. And it actually, that's what research has shown is it actually, when you show people facts and figures, they become more confirmed in their opinion, even if the facts and figures are in opposition.
You're totally right. No one has been bludgeoned into believing something. That's never happened. I mean, and if it does happen, there's something psychologically wrong with that person. There are some sort of masochist who want, they like, abuse or something. Like you don't convince someone by putting them down. And you can't convince someone that you are out for love and the greater good by putting them down. I don't know if that makes sense.
That doesn't come across with yelling and criticism and.
Yeah, right. So there's kind of two different messages there, but we do it with the gospel all the time. I mean, we do it in the church too, with the world, where we haven't learned how to speak the truth and be firm in the truth, but speak it in love, speak it in a way that is communicating that we are for you, that we are for what is good. And if we stand against something, it's because it's something God taught me a few years ago. He said, stop saying, I love you, but. He said, just stop saying that.
Yeah.
Because there shouldn't be a but at the end of that. Because what but means is, there's a little Beavis and Butthead moment there. He said, but. What but means is except for. There's almost like, there's
I love most of you
or whatever, but instead God taught me to say, because I love you, right? Because what we want to express to people, when we say, I love you, but I don't like it when you do that, right? Well, then it's kind of a weird way to say that. So what God taught me is say, because I love you, I disagree with that. It's because I love you, because I want the best for you. I can't agree with that, and because I want the best for whatever, in this situation for people and politics, whatever the situation is, as we're talking with people. But again, we've kind of come to this place, and I think it's human nature, but we've come to this place where we think, well, if we're right, then we just get to berate each other. And being online gives us this safe distance to where,
right.
If you had said that to me, in the 80s to my face, I would have just smacked you. It's so combative, but because of distance, we somehow allow it. And I just think it's unhealthy, obviously.
I heard something similar about the word but is that it erases what you first said.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, but
right. That's
a good point. But
right.
I really like the movie, but
right. I like the movie, but so just be honest with what you're saying. I like these parts of the movie,
right.
And also these parts I did not like, or I agree with that. What is also true is, we can't forget that this is also true. Yes, we should definitely want this for whatever, but this is also true.
Butts are important.
Be clear with your butts.
So moving on from the Beavis and Butthead moment. So towards the end of the movie, they do the things. They knock down the building. Starro, this giant telepathic extraterrestrial starfish, comes out and releases all these little starfish that become like little gas masks on their faces, kind of like aliens, but not quite as terrifying. And they talk to Waller, the Viola Davis's character, she's also awesome. Yeah, she makes it look like the whole thing is a huge inconvenience, which is hilarious.
Yeah, she's a great actress.
And so she calls in because they're jammer, whatever. They couldn't communicate. So now they can communicate. Hey, what's the update? What's going on? They said, well, we've knocked down the building we were supposed to, but this giant starfish is wreaking havoc. And she said, I don't care, basically. And that's when they have the decision, because as we mentioned earlier, they had these little implanted bombs at the base of their skulls that she has the power to press a button and blow them up. So in that moment, they have the choice of, well, our mission's over. We successfully did it. And we're going to let the starfish go kill thousands of people because that's what we're being told to do. That's the easy way, right?
It's Project Starfish, Miss Waller. It's headed towards the city, and I think it wants to feed on as many people as it can.
Not our problem. If you've destroyed Jotunheim and the records within, you've achieved the objective. Corto Maltese is no longer a U.S. ally. If anything, the White House will consider fomenting disruption in a hostile nation a positive development.
You heard what she said. Fuck.
Bloodsport is off mission.
What the?
She'll kill you, you know?
That's her business.
I knew Sebastian sensed good in you for a reason.
Just keep that fucking rat away from me.
Ratcatcher is also off mission.
Bloodsport, Ratcatcher, turn around.
Where go, friends?
Then I'll wait.
I know what I'm carrying the javelin for.
Creel, turn around now! Turn back now, goddammit! Open it.
Miss Waller.
Open it! What are you doing, Task Force X? Fuck! Turn around now, goddammit! You dumb pieces of shit! Motherfucker! Goddammit! Task Force X! This is your last motherfucking warning! Oh my God! What the fuck did you do?
So somebody took Miss Waller's putter and knocked her over the head unconscious because she was about to blow up the team. And that's what the team said. She's like, they're doing the right thing. And in these moments of moral choices, and going back to what we talked about, those patterns, breaking patterns feels like death. It feels like your head's going to blow up.
Good.
No,
So good.
and because it's so ingrained, it feels like, oh no, if I don't go yell at my wife because she just hurt my feelings, I'm going to explode. I mean, I felt that way. My head is going to explode if I don't say something harmful and hurtful to try to tell my wife what I think is going on, right? It's truth, but it's truth spoken not in love, but truth spoken like a javelin. Whatever pattern that is. And we've described multiple patterns. We have that choice. And it does feel like your head's going to blow off. And I loved the thing. She's going to kill you. That's on her.
Yeah.
I had a little bit of this conversation in my head about doing this movie for this podcast. This is pushing the envelope. It's got a lot of cursing, as you just heard in the clip. It's got a lot of violence. But that's for you, the listener. You get to do without what you will. And if you want to blow up our podcast, then that's you can do that. But we're trying to engage culture, and that's not all in the safe movies. It's not all in Simon Birch. It's not all the Field of Dreams. It's not in the movies that are sort of neat and clean and tidied up, because life isn't like that. I loved what you said at the very beginning, Britt, and I know we've hit it a few times. People are messy. People have rough edges. Even the people that you think don't have rough edges, don't ever curse, don't ever do anything, or would never think of watching a movie as horrific as the Suicide Squad. I feel like I'm talking to an Ohio State fan now. The Ohio State. But even the people, even the preachers have rough edges. They just hide it.
They just hide it. That's absolutely true. And that's one of the things that always bothered me about other pastors, is they hide it. And then some people get surprised when they hear me be honest about my struggles. And they're like, oh, like, I'm like, hey, guess what? Like, I'm not a professional. There are no professional Christians. Like, and it's just going to make me feel more alone if I have to hide my struggles too. And that doesn't mean I broadcast them for everybody, but I have to have my friends and my community too. But I love what you said, man, because that's exactly where I was going with it too. Because a lot of times that's why we give in when we want to make different choices. You see, if we want to have a different story, we're going to have to make different choices. That's the reality.
Oh, that's hitting the quotes.
if we want a different story, we're going to have to make different choices. And if the choices we've been making is for those choices are for ourselves, for our safety, this is what people expect of us, or we feel stuck. Like when we make decisions outside of those patterns, like you described, it does feel like it's going to cost us our life. It's going to be risky. Right. It feels like a huge risk. And we don't want to feel that. We don't want to feel like we're jumping off of a ledge. We don't want to feel those sort of feelings. But in the end, why did they make these choices? And I think this is the important part to me, is they made these choices. They weren't being rebellious against Waller. It wasn't just rebellion against the government. It wasn't like, we'll show you. There was literally a moral choice that there are women and children and innocent people that are going to suffer if we don't do something.
Yep.
And if Waller decides at that point to kill us because we're trying to protect the innocent, then that is her choice. Then that is what she is about. And they've set it up really well, by the way, in the movie, because one of the earlier moments when Waller is quote unquote recruiting, not really recruiting, she's forcing him, but she's recruiting Bloodsport. And she's like, hey, your daughter, like I could put her in jail. We could try her as an adult, and those people die. And like people working with her are like, you were just messing, right? Like you wouldn't really kill his daughter, would you? And she's like, I'll do what I need to do.
Well, there's a scene that I wanted to touch on early in the movie when they get on there, and there's a giant shark, king shark, right? The Nahweh, I think. And he's about to eat Ratcatcher 2, who's asleep. And they go through this, and basically she's like, you don't eat friends. He's like, I don't have friends. And Bloodsport is just like, he's lying, right? Because he's like, will you eat me if I'm your friend? and the king shark's like, no. And his voice is Sylvester Stallone, so it's just hilarious. But she says, and I don't have the exact quote, but it's basically like, I will risk this for love. It's like, I will risk my life for friendship. I will put my bets, I'll put my chips on the table.
That's right.
I would rather die risking love than hold back in fear. And I didn't think of that at all until you had said that, because that had set up her character of, I'm going to pursue love even if it kills me. Even if he's going to eat me, I'm going to say I'm your friend because I'm a loving person, because she's got the love of her father.
Yeah. And I think that's an important note to take here, that Ratcatcher 2, she is the moral compass for this movie. Kind of like Donkey was the moral compass for Shrek. Like, she's the moral compass for this movie. And the fact that she had a loving father that had given her a moral compass is important. That she did have the love of a father that she wished she could give to other people. And yes, she was the one who at the end was like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm going. Like, I got to do something. And that kind of forces other people to make a choice too. And we don't sometimes realize that. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but so often when somebody makes a courageous moral choice and stands up, you inspire other people to do the same. You not just Bloodsport and the shark and the polka dot guy, but the people back in America with the golf putter and Waller, like her one choice and her moral compass of making a choice, a bold choice that changed the direction. It changed the direction of the whole movie. And that's something that I think it's important to see, because sometimes we feel like it's such a risk, but we don't realize that everybody wishes they could make choices like that. That's why these movies appeal to people, because we all wish we could make choices like that.
I want to be the hero.
you can be a hero, and this is how, right? But it takes making choices that carry, at least seemingly carry, a lot of risk. But in the end, it's about what matters and making choices according to what really matters in life, which is protecting the innocent. You know, in James, he talks about your pure and undefiled religion is to take care of widows and orphans, the fatherless and the widow. Like, this is who you take care of, and you keep yourself away from the corruption that's in the world. And those are the kind of decisions that they actually make. Like, I don't think the writers of the movie thought this far into
they weren't pulling in James.
weren't pulling in James. But when you think about the choice that she makes,
it's James Gunn.
Oh, so that's so super spiritual. No, but that's the choice that she makes, that she inspires others to make, which is, we're going to protect the innocent. And she specifically says children, I think, at one point.
Yeah.
We're going to protect the innocent, and we're going to stand against the corruption that would make us even make this choice. We're going to reject that they get to make this choice for us, right? We have to make this choice because it's what's important, what's really important in life. And those are the kind of choices that change our story too. And it may not be against a big alien starfish.
You better hope not.
However,
watch your face.
Though at the core, those are the choices that change our story, is when we make the decisions about what really matters, whether it's watching porn or whether it's, when no one's around, or whether it's yelling at my wife, or whatever it is when we take a moment and ask ourselves the question about what's really important, what really matters, and then we can change our story.
As you were talking, I was reminded yesterday, even I had an interaction with a customer service guy, because one of my sons, my 18-year-old, he's going off to college next week, and his box of bedding stuff isn't here. And I ordered it like a month ago. And the guy's like, oh, I can't even, it's packed, but it's not shipped. It's not going to get there by the time he leaves. And this is all on chat, right? So it's super easy to be snarky. And I got off the chat because he can't do anything. And I'm like, whatever. Just give me my money back sometime this year. And I went upstairs and I told my wife this. I was like, I think I made that guy wish he didn't have this job because he had to deal with me. And I'm like, that's not the way I want people to feel. Right. But it's those choices of, in the big picture, is the money that important? Because it's going to come back eventually. But it's like, you're inconveniencing me. You're not doing what I want you to do, the way I want you to do it, in the time frame I want you to do it in. And I have no other way, kind of like Polka Dot Man. I need to expel all this anxiety and this venom and these poisonous polka dots. And you are the unfortunate recipient of my rage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going back to the movie.
Yeah.
We get towards the end. I want to finish the sort of the Ratcatcher 2 arc. And then we'll talk about Peacemaker, who's just an enjoyable person. I can't remember if I did it before or after, but he's described as the douchey Captain America.
Yeah.
So at the end, they're fighting the starfish, and as Ratcatcher 2 promises, she's the one who saves the lives, because she brings the rats in, millions of rats that swarm, and Idris Elba, Bloodsport, he's terrified of rats, so he's curled up in a ball, and she puts her arm over him.
Yeah, that's cool.
And as the rats are swarming up the giant starfish, this clip plays that I think sort of reminds her, is one of her motivations. It's another scene with her dad.
Why rats, Papa?
Rats are the lowliest and most despised of all creatures, my love. They have purpose. So do we all.
And I love how James Gunn uses music in his movies, whether it's Guardians or Scooby-Doo or this one. The music is good. I like it. It's enjoyable. But the rats have purpose. If the rats have purpose, so do we.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how lowly or dirty or gross or kicked out of society you feel, you have a purpose. And
I love it.
My purpose yesterday was not one I wanted. I made that dude feel like I hate my job. And that's not the purpose I want to have. So I need to choose better. As you said, if I want a different story, I need to make different decisions.
Yeah. And I love that part too. I think it's very well put that anybody, any being can have a purpose. And if the lowest of humans, lowest of creatures can have a purpose, a good purpose, then that means anybody can. And the Bible does this all the time. Like, we just look at the Bible as if they're made up stories sometimes, but no, Rahab was a real person. Like, she was a prostitute who was, on the margins of society, and but she made the difference. And she's in the line of David. You know what I mean? Like these are Mary Magdalene. Like we keep bringing these people up. Tax collectors were seen as like pond scum in Jesus's day, and Jesus goes over to the guy's house and says, no, you have value, to Zacchaeus, and of course Matthew. And we see these sort of things as all the time. And Jesus says the prostitutes and the tax collectors will get into heaven before the religious do, right? I mean, he's saying that it doesn't matter anymore, your position. It never really mattered. And we see that element in the scripture all the time. And we need to stop seeing that as just a nice story and to realize that's truth. That's reality. And that if even the lowest of the low can be redeemed, and like Paul says about himself, I was the worst of all sinners, and now I'm preaching the gospel. Like, if this can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. And I love that sort of humility and that is inspiration. And again, she does that, right? She's the one who makes the moral choice that inspires everybody. And so that was well put together for the movie. I like that.
And we're not called to be perfect.
What?
Like that guy, he loved his daughter, right? He even loved rats and knew that they had purpose. And he's like, if they have purpose, we have purpose. And he instilled that in his daughter, while at the same time dealing with the drug problem and being homeless and all this stuff. And I mean, we're not going to also comment on the fact that he used those rats to steal, but that's another thing. But life isn't as pretty and as wrapped up as I think we would like that. And so this, I think it actually transitions us to Peacemaker. Peacemaker, played by John Cena, who I think is a great comedic actor in this, much better than in F9, where he's trying to outscowl Vin Diesel, and you're always going to lose. So Peacemaker is sort of like Captain America. Like I said, a douchey Captain America. He has this whole thing about all that he would do for liberty and for peace. And so they're going in to rescue Colonel Flagg at some point, and they're looking at this camp. And he says something, and I'm just going to play the clip because to me, this is it's a great quote because, as we mentioned earlier, we all have these things that we cherish.
Nothing like a bloodbath to start the day.
They call you Peacemaker.
I cherish peace with all my heart. I don't care how many men, women, and children I need to kill to get it.
I cherish peace with all my heart. I don't care how many men, women, and children I have to kill to get it.
Yeah.
And that's the opposite, basically.
Right.
That's
You're right.
The opposite of the moral choice, the opposite of purpose. The purpose is peace, but it's not really peace.
No, it's not.
We all have these things. You're like, well, I'm not Peacemaker. There's nothing I'd kill somebody for. Maybe. We haven't put you in all sorts of situations. But I had a friend of mine tell me, because we were in Uganda and we were coming back, and I was like, it's funny because over there they still have like literally worship idols, and in many third world countries, they still have those things they worship, little carved images out of stones or wood or whatever. And I said, it's hard because people in the States, in the Western culture, don't really understand it. We don't have physical idols. Typically, our idols might be safety in today's current climate, safety or convenience or comfort or timely delivery of bedding for your son. It's and my friend said it's those things that we hold on to too tightly that become our idols, because they can be good things. They can be a ministry. But if your ministry becomes something you cling to at the expense of all others, I cherish peace with all my heart. And I don't care who I've got to run over to get it. I love God with all my heart. And I'm going to push everybody out of the way so they know it.
Right.
And you actually push people farther from God by your actions and your activity. I love a bloodbath. How is that making peace? And the interesting thing, as I was watching, I was like, we're called to be peacemakers.
Right. But how did Jesus come and show us peace? He sacrificed himself. And this is the Suicide Squad. Like, he sacrificed himself. He gave of himself so that others could have peace. And if we all do that, that's the world we want to live in. That's the world we want to live in. We want to live in the world, that's heaven, where everyone is willing to give of themselves so that others can have peace. Because when everybody does that, everyone has peace. But if you have to make other people suffer so you can have peace, then that's not peace. You don't really have peace. You're forcing others. You're killing. It's to an extreme for the character because it's a movie and it's fun. And you're right. John Cena does such a great job with that role. These are the kind of roles he needs to dig into. Like, he's not necessarily an action hero sort of guy. Like, he's more a comedic guy than anything. So all that to say is we have to realize that that's a false sense of peace. When you have to make immoral choices to get it, then that's not peace. Then you actually don't get to peace. And so a lot of people don't sort of connect with this because of the world that we live in. But here we are in 2021, and we have to realize that even if I don't live through it, whatever, right? Even if I have to sacrifice for something, the peace that I have is worth it, is a peace that no one can take from me, is a peace that, Jesus says, don't be afraid of the one who can kill the body, be afraid of the guy who can kill the body and send the soul to hell. Like you're dying one way or the other anyway. Like choose the peace that is real, and making choices that are in line with what matters to God is what will give you that peace. Even if it doesn't work out like you think it should have worked out, even if you don't get the thing or the marriage doesn't go right or what, even if it doesn't work out the way you want it to work out, making the right choices and being at peace with God is the kind of peace that no one can take from you.
And I think the interesting thing was, in that scenario, he's looking there. He's like, I don't care who has to die for me to bring peace. When what Jesus came to say is, if you want peace, you have to die.
That's right.
Right? The whole thing of if you want to save your life, you're going to lose it. But if you lose your life for my sake, you're going to find it in a whole lot more.
Yep, that's right.
My peace, I came to bringing peace, and not like the world gives you peace, but like actual peace that's inside, that doesn't matter on the external situation.
Yep.
All right. So that's all we got for today. I hope you enjoyed this conversation on the Suicide Squad.
Yep.
It's probably the freshest movie we've done. I mean, this has only been out like a week or two.
Definitely. I mean, like, we literally have done this movie within a week or week and a half of it coming out. Like, that's definitely the exact opposite of the 80s string that I enjoy.
I'm sure we'll get back to those. So this has been Paul McDonald and Britt Mooney talking about the Suicide Squad. So if you guys want to support us and join our mission, check us out on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Men at the Movies. We've got an ebook coming out. Britt's been working on The Princess Bride and the Power of Story. It's going to be sort of like a 14-day devotional that I think is going to be outstanding. We're super excited. We'll do some other stuff. We've got some other stuff in cooking on the back burners, that's going to be coming out. So you don't want to miss that. You get access to the live streams. You get some merch every once in a while.
We're going to be doing some extra videos, little short sort of vignettes of different observations as we go about story and about truth. So it'll be good.
Yeah. We're going to be making recommendations for Britt's new ringtones.
Right? What the heck? I turned the volume down and everything.
So I hope you enjoyed this episode. We had a lot of fun talking about it. Yep. I had more fun watching the Suicide Squad than Britt. But regardless, we hope you enjoyed this. We hope you got something out of it. Oh, check out our website. We're at menatthemovies.com/podcast, where you can find quotes, some of the themes, questions that if you want to dig deeper, and other resources that we might have mentioned. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you join us next time here on the Men at the Movies podcast.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?